Hello, good evening, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. We're talking about Genesis, and we have made it to a personal favorite of mine, Selling England by the Pound. Not only is this not only is this my favorite Genesis album, this might be one of my favorite albums, period. I think this is an absolute masterpiece. Near perfect. I mean, very rarely do you get an album that is perfect. Um, but this one does come really close. I mean, it's got a vibe about it. It's got it's got some tremendous playing on it, some great writing, some great lyrics. It's a great theme that kind of goes to the album as well. It's just brilliant. And then talking about Genesis up to this point, I mean, it had been kind of a steady stream of I guess ambition. Every album they did, they took it just a little bit further, right? So I mean, Trespass, you kind of get them flirting with progressive rock. Nursery Crime, they start introducing the fables and the stories, and they start getting better at that. Of course, Foxtrot, you have Supper's Ready, which is, certainly the culmination of what they were trying to do up to that point. And then to follow up Foxtrot, they come out with this, which I think is just, unlike Foxtrot, which I think is, it's a brilliant album with lots of songs. It's not a very well balanced album. It's kind of like the first side, here's a bunch of songs, and the second side, here's the big thing. Whereas this is a complete album, I mean, front to back. You can listen to it, and it's coherent. It's entertaining. It's funny. It's thought-provoking, perhaps. It's got all those things. And obviously, if you couldn't tell by the title, Selling England by the Pound, it's extremely English. Obviously, I'm from a different part of the world, but a lot of my family comes from England. I was raised on Monty Python, so I mean, Englishness has always been a thing in my life. But getting into this album as a teenager certainly educated me on Englishness. I learned all about wimpy bars and all the grocery store names, Co-op and Fine Fare, and all kinds of stores that are actually no longer existing, and weren't existing when I was alive. But yeah, let's go through the tracks here. Well, let's show you the sleeve and that. This is the inner sleeve right here. Got some nice lyrics, picture of the band, more lyrics over here. And, again, talking about the complete package of a great album. I mean, I just love this album cover. It's magnificent. Illustrates one of the songs on the album. And then the back is very simple. Side A, side B, a couple of production notes. Brilliant. So, side one, we open with Dancing with the Moonlit Night. Absolute classic Genesis track. I love the a cappella start, Peter Gabriel just starting on the vocals. Again, the Englishness, all the English references in the lyrics are just great. Obviously, like the phrase "Selling England by the Pound" has got a lot of weight to it. What else is in here? Old Father Thames is a reference. I mean, the lyrics in general. I mean, I'm not going to annotate them, but I mean, they're some of Peter Gabriel's best, I think. They're so quirky and they're so eccentric, quintessential progressive lyrics. And musically, it's great. Like I said, it starts out with the a cappella, acoustic instruments. Fairly quickly come into the mix. I love that first piano note. I think it's the Paper Late part. Merchandise he traded in his prime. It's, yeah, I can't remember exactly the line where the piano comes in, but it's a great moment. It all kind of builds. You get this nice guitar motif. I'm not sure if that's a Steve Hackett line on the guitar or if it was a Peter Gabriel kind of melody. Yeah, it's a steady build. And then we get the big chorus, the big dramatic chorus, talking about green shield stamps and the Holy Grail or the Grail Sun, whatever. Said I'm terrible with these lyrics. I mean, I love the lyrics and I know them pretty well. If I'm listening to it, then it always just comes right up to mind. But talking about it is very hard sometimes. Anyway, after the first chorus, it goes into this great instrumental section. Like I mentioned, them doing a bit of fusion in the albums beforehand, so that is kind of that's in there. Great performances by the whole band. Without, you don't even realize it, and it comes back into that acoustic theme, but quite heavy, and the vocals come back, and the, Collins is just, right on the beat. Second chorus comes, we got kind of a funny synthesizer line, and the song kind of fades out, and it goes into this absolutely seminal, gorgeous little 12-string guitar thing. I think it's Mike Rutherford that just kind of holds it down, and then the other band just kind of contribute little bits of atmosphere. There's some cymbal chimes, Steve Hackett kind of atmospheric solos. Obviously the keyboards are in there, but it's all over this little acoustic guitar motif, which I think it's good because it intrigues you. The first time I heard the album, you hear all this information in the song, and then there's just this maybe like a minute and a half of just mysterious peace that comes up with that guitar line, and I think it's one of the best moments in the whole catalog of Genesis. I absolutely love that, the end of Dancing with the Moonlit Night, just brilliant. And it fades out a little bit, and we are introduced to the sound of this big synthesizer sound, supposed to sound like a lawnmower, and we get I Know What I Like, which this is a pop song, possibly the most famous song off the album. I mean, I guess in the mainstream. One that they played pretty well constantly after the album was made. And it's filled with all the quirky Gabrielisms. It's about a guy who's a lawnmower who, in spite of everyone's best attempts to help him go out and get a job and do the right thing in life, he knows what he likes, and he likes being a lawnmower. So he stays with that. As a song, it's way better than Timetable from Foxtrot. I'm sure no one will disagree with that. I hope not. I think I Know What I Like is a really nice little song. Catchy chorus, a bit sing-along. But it's still early Genesis. It's a pop song, but it's nothing like the pop that they would do later on. And also, that's the song where the album cover's from. See? Lawnmower. Great. Then we get Firth of Fifth, third song of the album. This is Tony Banks' big piece. Really, really good song. They kind of, the very proggy piano intro, very grand and kind of classical. I guess there's a bit of classical feelings with that. And the verses are quite like a heavy descending riff, which is it's a classic Genesis thing in the context of this album, but I think that kind of verse is a bit unique in the catalog. But yeah, obviously the big thing with Firth of Fifth is the big instrumental section in the middle. We get some really great classically influenced passages. Great playing by Tony Banks. Like I said, this song was really his kind of baby. And then Steve Hackett has his big moment too, where he reprises the flute melody that's at the beginning of the instrumental section, and he comes in with this big heavy guitar line, which is fantastic. And it all makes its way back to that heavy verse again, and there you go, classic early Genesis song. And then the first side wraps up with the fourth song on the album. We get More Fool Me, which is possibly a controversial song. I never liked it that much originally, but the more I've listened to the album, the more I've come to appreciate it. It's a little bit of breathing space. So it shows that the pacing on Selling England by the Pound is fantastic. I think they really nailed the track listing on it. So it's just got like a seamless flow when you listen to it. And the song itself, it's kind of like another kind of poppy thing, less eccentric than I Know What I Like. Obviously, Phil Collins is on vocals. This is the second song he sang lead on, the first being For Absent Friends from Nursery Crime. He's still kind of doing the schoolboy singer thing, but it's a nice little song. Like I said, it's short, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it provides some breathing space. And they also strum the guitars too, which is kind of a first for Genesis. They always arpeggiated the notes. But yeah, More Fool Me. Nice little way to end off the first side. We flip the record over, and we get track 5 of the album, The Battle of Epping Forest. Now this is the other one that I think, those that aren't as big a fan of this album will point to the Battle of Epping Forest and call that kind of the hairball song. Um, the main criticism being, it's too long. It's 11 plus minutes. It's obviously it is a very long song, um, but also that it's very wordy and there's too many lyrics, and that was kind of a problem with Genesis, with Gabriel's contribution to Genesis, is that he would put all kinds of these lyrics, usually on very densely arranged bits of music. I can't talk. Um, so you'd have all these lyrics and then a really, really busy musical thing going underneath, and I guess it can be a little bit overwhelming. And truth be told, I guess the Battle of Epping Forest, I think I've gradually liked that song a little bit less. But when I first heard this album, I thought it was absolutely amazing. I think it's Peter Gabriel at his peak. His lyrics are so silly and funny, and the voices he does. This is a real peak of the theatrics that Gabriel is doing. Narrating. Every different character of the song, we get a different voice in that, and it adds a really bizarre dimension to the song. But I guess they probably could have edited it down a bit. You know what I'm trying to say. And I've had too much coffee and I'm all jittery. Yeah. So Battle of Epping Forest. It's appropriate time, a very hyper song like that. It's an appropriate time for me to have coffee jitters. Yeah, it's a great song, and one of Phil Collins' best drumming performances too. So syncopated. Great beat, classic Phil. So then anyway, after we get this big 11-minute, huzzah with all these lyrics and all this music, we get another bit of breathing space on the album. We get After the Ordeal, which is kind of a rare Genesis instrumental. They did it a few times, but not too regularly. And very classically influenced. Tony Banks says he really hates this song. I can't say I hate it. Again, I think it's a necessary bit of pacing for the album. But again, it might be too long. It's a bit sleepy. There's another Hackett guitar solo in there. I can't fault it because it's there for a reason. There's reason for it being on the album. Like I said, it's pacing. It's letting the album have a nice flow. That song wraps up, and we get The Cinema Show. Now this could be the most famous song on the album, actually. At least the second half of it. They played the second half pretty well all throughout their career afterwards. But I like the whole thing. I'm actually quite sad that a lot of cases, when there's a live version of The Cinema Show, you only get the end, because the song at the beginning is an absolute classic little bit of Genesis. It almost picks up where Dancing with the Moonlit Night left off. That coda to Moonlit Night with the acoustic guitar, and then the acoustic 12-string opens up The Cinema Show. So there's like a full circle kind of a thing going on there. I mean, it's kind of brings you back to where the album started with, in a way. And you get some really nice lyrics about Romeo and Juliet going out to the cinema. Lovely. And great atmosphere in that first half too. I love the na 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 bit, which has got Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins doing some great vocal work together. It's just terrific atmosphere, very dramatic, sense of seriousness, but whimsical as well. It's brilliant. The Cinema Show is an absolutely brilliant song. And then of course, the second half, the famous half, big Tony Banks keyboard solo. He finally got his way, and he finally got this nice huge section of album where he could just and it should be mentioned, in comparison with a lot of his contemporaries, Tony Banks is just such a tasteful player. I really like his keyboard playing. I mean, obviously Keith Emerson is a wizard. Rick Wakeman is a wizard. But yeah, Tony Banks is. I mean, his playing is very melodic and it's very conscientious, and again, it serves the song. I mean, he's a songwriter, right? He thinks more in terms of melody than in terms of look at how crazy this is. and structure in that. But it's great. I mean, it's a great jam. Again, the whole band's on very fine form. Although I think it's only Rutherford, Collins, and Tony Banks playing that last section. When I saw the musical box do Selling England, the Steve Hackett guy left during that part, and it was just like I said, Collins, Banks, and Rutherford, which is interesting because that was the band that went on to have the huge success in the 80s. So it's interesting, you know, again, it is the same band, you know, those are the same guys that made Invisible Touch, and, you know, they're just jamming out brilliantly on the cinema show. I really like it. And of course, this also should be noted, this became a bit of a tradition in Genesis to finish off their albums, with like kind of a big instrumental bit, and then they would reprise the beginning of the album, because Cinema Show kind of fades into Isle of Plenty, which is a reprise of the Moonlit Night theme, like the actual Moonlit Night theme, not just the end bit. And this is where Gabriel makes reference to all the all grocery stores in England and that. And it's great. I love the. You know, even though they're kind of wry lyrics with the names of the grocery stores and that last line, thankful for her fine fare discount, Tess cooperates, still alone and oh hello, see the deadly nightshade glow. Something very. There's something about that line. I can't. You know, I'm not going to be foolish enough to try and talk about it, but I love that. It's great. But yeah, and like I said, this became the tradition of reprising the first song on the album with a big instrumental at the end. Every album up until Duke, except for Then There Were Three and The Lamb, have that instrumental followed by a reprise. And I think that's great. I mean, it makes the album complete. It makes it feel like, you know, obviously this is an album full of songs, but it is also one coherent statement, which is something that early prog was, you know, really trying to go. The art form then was the album. It was no longer the single. They were making, you know, full, you know, 40 to 50 minute works. I think that about wraps it up. Like I said, I can't rave enough about this album because I absolutely love it. I think it is one of the best albums of that period. One of the best albums ever. And yeah, that's it. Selling England by the Pound by Genesis. Really good album. You should go out and listen to it if you haven't done so already. Absolutely love it. We're going to be back next time with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. See you later.